Good evening, seniors. Good evening, sir. Dean, sir, are you there?
I'm here, yeah.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Hi, sir. Good evening.
You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Yes, sir. So I think most of the participants are here, and the ones that will not be able to join, you can watch through the YouTube live stream. So we can quickly start with the brief decode session. So let me introduce you to the 67th year ANDC moderator officially again, architect Dean Dcruz, sir. So today, I'm sure the brief has been very clear and very focused on what the intention of the whole trophy is. So I think we can hear a couple of words from sir about the trophy and what the intention that went behind in curating this year's brief. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, hi, everyone. I think as architects, we're considered people who design buildings, and that's how we find solutions to the problems around us. But often our solutions actually lie in something which is systems based, basically where you don't have to design a building, or you minimize the amount of building required. Through the many years, I've been in practice now for 40 years, and through these years, we've realized that in architecture which is temporal in nature, that means something which is lightweight, lasts only for a short time, in certain conditions, actually is far more effective than something permanent. Architecture is always in a state of flux. Buildings are getting redundant much quicker. In the old times, buildings would last, in their function they were designed for hundreds of years. But now in 20 years, you see buildings getting redundant, being pulled down, being renovated completely. And therefore, we're looking at an architecture which is highly flexible, lightweight, and at times dismantleable. Also, as architects, we realize that we need to contribute to society. And a lot of architects are now contributing to society in various ways, by intervening in small-scale structures, especially which are lightweight, temporary, or in urban issues, addressing urban issues which face things, whether it's pedestrianization or systems that help the street furniture, anything which actually helps the city develop itself. There are a lot of architects also who feel that they need to give back to society. Traditionally, around the world, there used to be the system of giving 1/10 of what you earn back to society or to a religious organization, whatever. And I think a lot of architects have now almost adopted that in a very similar manner, that whatever we earn, especially if we're doing well, can we actually give back to society and improve society, and not just wait for projects to come to us, but identify projects where you feel you as a person who's good at design could actually offer your services and make a big difference to whatever's the spaces around you, the urban spaces, the buildings around you, and help basically NGOs. NGOs of non-governmental organizations have now actually started to play a massive role in addressing a lot of the issues that we have today. Unfortunately, the government has failed in its duty at times to actually provide services, whether it's education, healthcare, or any other social service. And NGOs have really stepped up to this thing. And the corporate world has recognized that they also need to do their bit. So if you must know that they have this thing of CSR, which is corporate social responsibility, and 2% of their profits is meant to go to certain causes, whether it's, again, education, healthcare, improving the areas around where these corporate houses function. And so that is tax-free from them. So there's a great incentive for corporate houses to actually contribute to society in some way. So we as architects actually can plug into this fund also that's there, which is available to actually make these things effective. So this problem was really to help identify the areas where we, as people with the talent of design, can actually help corporate houses, NGOs, the government even, in actually intervening in these small scales interventions which can actually make a difference to people's lives on the ground. And it's, they talk about, small design impacts, design exercise with, big impacts. And that's the way we need to go as designers, is really understand if even if the small intervention can be, how big an impact can we make? And we've seen great examples all across the world where these small interventions can actually make a tremendous impact. We ourselves have been working, we've started the trust called the COCOM Trust, Design Trust, where we actually work with NGOs and solve problems. We've had a lot of sort of workshops that we had. We've had one with an organization called Justice Adda, which is a Bangalore-based organization which looks at transparency in the justice system. So we looked at courthouses, police stations, government offices like the Secretariat, and how can we as designers actually make things easier for the public, make these justice spaces less intimidating. We also had a conference and workshop on various other social issues. So other NGOs that work, say, in garbage, it worked in craft, worked in water, waste management. So we had these workshops with them so they can understand how we as designers can actually make a big difference. So we felt this great need for young architects to actually open their eyes to the ability to help society in general through these small design interventions. Because a lot of these times where NGOs or small organizations want to sort of, do something effective, they do not have the design skills to actually do something which is, meaningful and purposeful and well, executed. But we as architects are trained in such a way that we can actually, assist these organizations in identifying. That's why the exercise that's been given to you all is really how can you collaborate with an NGO, understand the real problems, see to them. Sometimes the NGO may not even have a real solution. So the idea is to actually understand what the issue is, interpret it. So you don't take it directly and say, okay, I want this kiosk or whatever the same one. What is your real need? Go through a design exercise. Can it be solved in some innovative way, less expensive, more effective? And how can you actually achieve that? So I think it's a dialogue that you need to conduct, with the NGO, and then find a solution, an innovative solution that can actually effectively create a design which would really help the ground reality that you're addressing. So if and the whole idea is to make something which is valid for that situation and visible. The moment we worked on a project called the Moving School, which is basically where we designed a sort of school which is on a tractor trailer bed. This is for construction sites in various areas. We've done it in Goa, Rajasthan, and other places. So this school actually moves with the teachers, because construction workers, they move from site to site every 3-6 months, whatever. The kids don't have a proper education. So here the school actually folds up and the teacher actually goes to the new site, construction site, and the children have a continuous education with them. So it's only because we are designers that we can actually understand the issue and come up with a solution. So if we can actually, use our design skills effectively, we can make a tremendous difference. And it also comes from this need of architects to be seen. The moment people see, oh, this is done by an architect, we don't just design, buildings. We're so much more than that, and we're so much more effective if we are really to reach out to society, and also to give you the sense of your own responsibility to society, not just wait for a client to come design this house or hotel, whatever, but actually find what's wrong in society and offer your service. Say, possibly this is a solution, and can we intervene, help you, and create something that's really effective. Yeah. So if there are any questions that people have, I'd be happy to clarify a direction or any other issues that you may have with executing this design exercise. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for dissecting it so well. I think we can take a couple of two questions and then we can open up the floor for queries from the participants. So, one top question I had is if we look at the brief, there are specific terms that are the highlight of this year, and that is basically the challenge. The one is to one scale of the model, then the design aspect, and then the word NGO, the non governmental organizations, comes into picture. When often when a student looks at the brief together, so even though the brief is very pinpointedly clear about what they could do in terms of design with respect to an NGO, but again, often there is this a doubt that is always installed when we say NGO and 1:1, building it there. With maybe with respect to various things like funds, like what to actually design. Maybe they'll have various problems, but we don't exactly reach to one point of what to design that will benefit them. So how would you, as a student, would look at this thing if it was a competition for you? I mean, not giving away the complete challenge, but exactly maybe a little bit of hints for students to understand and walk through the path. So you're on.
Yeah. I think it'll vary from case to case. It's very difficult to give like one solution for everything. But I think it's really important to actually sit with the NGO and see where is the area in which they really need design help, chart it out, and see maybe it's not even a structure, maybe it's a system that you actually put into place, but still using your design skills. Of course, in this exercise, we're trying to, so that there's something visible, tangible. We're trying to create something that's that you can build. So you also get into the exercise of actually building it yourself. And one is to create something which is, visible as well. So, for example, if NGOs have an outreach, of events, say, and they need in a large, say, convention space, a pop-up kiosk or something which is they sell their products or they showcase the work that they're doing. That could be that intervention. Exhibition design, for example, is one great area which you find a lot of designers moving into because that creates a sort of visibility in a very temporary manner. So it has it has to be powerful and effective in terms of catching the eye and engaging people in whatever you're trying to showcase. So we would like this, whatever structure that is to actually capture the spirit of what that organization is doing in some way. So whether it's the materials that you're using, whether it's the design form, the colors. So how are you actually creating that message across? So what does it as an organization stand for? Can you translate that into the structure of that organization, and all using all the tools that you have as an architect in terms of the architectural expression of the materials, the technologies that you're incorporating into the thing, and of course all the other communication things, of whether the signage or the graphics that you're putting into it. So how can you actually make this a great communication exercise? I think is one way to look at it. And every NGO will have a very different approach, and your requirement may vary each depending on which organization you're working with. The actual product that you're making may be vastly different. So I think we should leave a little freedom in terms of what the execution is. So it doesn't have to be just a kiosk, it can be anything else, but we can handhold on that thing. So if you can put these things down, maybe send initial sort of ideas and across, we could help in actually brainstorming, if you like, and to refine that and help you all in getting it more effective in a way. I hope that answers that.
Yes, sir, it most definitely does. And there is one more question. So we as architects, as students, of course, we do have our deadlines with respect to various other things academically. But then when a competition like this comes up, of course, we genuinely interested and we do want to do a part for a non-governmental organization. But oftentimes certain units or colleges would face issue with the number of people that there are studying in that particular college. Because when we use the term 1:1 scale, it's often referred to as, or most probably understood as, there should be a requirement of a lot of people. And So this would stop, maybe hinder few units from participating. And oftentimes with the busy schedules, what would you take this? How would you take this challenge forward with these two major things that students or units that are participating would face?
So the role of an architect is really is to guide projects. No, where architect is really the chief builder. So we're really guiding projects. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to build it completely ourselves. So we can prototype, for example, actually make these smaller models. Show to suppose it's something that you feel that needs to be larger in scale. Is showed to maybe a craftsperson or a sort of a small scale sort of contractor, and say this is what we want to do, and then so that the students don't really have to completely build it themselves, but they're supervising it properly and then executing it. So that could be one possibility for students who are facing great difficulty in actually executing it physically. Though it's preferably it'd be nice to execute it. I mean, I remember once we did a pavilion for the Serendipity Festival in Goa, and they wanted a lightweight pavilion, which was to showcase a large exhibition on what they call barefoot architecture. But basically, it was a competition of creating these craft pavilions across India in different locations. And so it had to be a fairly large, it was about 150 square meters. And we first thought, okay, fine, we can't really build, we don't have the capacity to build it ourselves. So we looked at contractor, and the cost was frightfully expensive. It was built in bamboo and steel cables and sort of plastic stretch sheets across it. And we said, okay, it's going to cost so much. Let's just shut the office for a few days and let's build it ourselves. That's exactly what we did. So we shut the office and we got everybody on board. And just the joy of cutting bamboo, stretching cables gave such a great learning to everyone in the office. So how do you actually join bamboo? How do you actually create the connectors, say, between steel cables? How do you stick the plastic onto the bamboo framework? The whole structural understanding of the materials came into play, and just the joy of having built it yourself was extremely rewarding. So there's nothing like building it yourself. But if you are facing a difficulty, can you at least engage yourself part-time with whoever can build it? If you feel that the NGO needs something which is more larger than what you can actually do it on your own. Yeah. So I think that freedom may be allowed to actually do that. But I think it's important that it's not just you make a drawing, you give it to some contractor, that you sort of show that and record what you've done in terms of the process, so that that assessment is clear and transparent.
Yes, understood. But again, stating the thing, it's more advisable, and it's the challenge is basically for the students to be engaged hands-on, and the whole idea is to get them involved in the practical experience other than theoretical learning that we go through in the academics. So Ivantika, if you have any questions, I think you can take over.
Yes, sir. So another query actually we got put forth a lot was why hands-on? And secondly, we have the answer to it, why hands-on, because we wanted to have a different iteration of how we go about briefs. So in NASA India, most of our trophies are unbuilt architecture. That is, everything is on paper, doesn't get into a 1:1 scale. But as the moderator of this trophy for this year, what do you see are the benefits of students taking part in this particular trophy this year?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, hands-on really gives you that experience of understanding the material. I don't know, most of you all know, but for the first 10 years of my architectural career, we used to design and build the buildings that we designed. So we would actually be the contractors as well, very much like Laurie Baker used to do. So we used to buy the materials, we used to go to site, we could actually see the construction. We would actually get our hands also dirty in terms of saying that this is how the brick is to be laid, or this is the shape of the ferrocement, sort of roof that's coming in. And so be on site almost half the day. There were very little drawings that were made. So it was actually sitting on site. And that gave us a tremendous insight into how materials work, because you could understand, how much a brick weighs, how much everything costs, what is the structural capability of each one. And these little failures also, something started cracking somewhere, something started bending elsewhere, gave us a greater understanding that we could actually create structures now with greater elegance. So not over design, but actually get something. And that's what held us in great stead in future years, because nobody could actually say that, no, this can't be done, because we said it can be done. It can be done this way. It can be done at this cost. And therefore that hands-on ability needs to be really engaged. I mean, in the old days, when we designed, we made, cardboard models, wooden models, whatever. Unfortunately, Dave, it's now your SketchUp and all the other softwares, 3D softwares, do it for you. So that handling of even a model is being lost. So I think it's important to actually get a hands-on approach. It can be something very simple, but it has to be well made. So we're not just putting something together crudely. So can we actually make it effective? How do you understand that materials and make it as elegant and as good looking as you can as an architect? You put in the aesthetics, you put in those little nuances which make a big difference between what a normal person would put together just as a functional aspect. But we actually bring in the whole aesthetic and communication into this exercise. So hands-on is extremely important. But as I said earlier, if there's a limitation of being able to build it, if it's something which is because of time constraints, cost constraints, whatever, it can be a hybrid sort of thing where basically you take part in it, but there could be another agency involved in the actual execution, preferably a craftsperson, so that you're imparting the craft. Like for Nite, we got Peter Rich. Say we wanted to do one of these walls, a very, very articulate vault. So we actually, Peter Rich came down with Central Das, and we got a whole lot of craftspeople together, students together. And in 2 days, there was this really wonderful timbrel vault that was, built on the campus. And it's so easy to do. And the reward that everyone felt, wow, this is possible. We can actually do it. So I know in colleges, most colleges, you have these small exercises of doing some sort of little brick thing on your own. But here's where you can actually create your own exercise. How can I actually make something effective? And if you do it out of material which is low cost, possibly even waste, it's even better. Yeah?
Yes, sir. Thank you. That was quite. I'm sure this would be an answer a student would value a lot. Moving on, you spoke about material. So, if we had to elaborate a little bit more on the material usage with regard to the brief, what would be your true sense on it?
Well, if it's something which is temporary in nature, then whatever's easily available. You have national materials. We also have industrial materials. So, like for example, in the old days, of course, you had things like MDF. Now you've got cement boards of high density, low density. You've got plastic sheets. You've got recycled plastic sheets. You've got a lot of industrial materials, which are also not too expensive. You've got, of course, some really fancy, finishing materials now, but it's not necessary to use that. So one can identify, low cost materials that are effective. I think that would be interesting. And if it is something made out of, say, recycled stuff, even better, because then you're trying to push that agenda. The roof of one of our office buildings is actually made out of Tetra Pak. It's crushed, shredded Tetra Pak cartons and molded into sheets. And we've had it now for about 12 years. Extremely inexpensive roofing system. And, high thermal efficiency, reflective nature, very lightweight. So there's a big advantage in actually just researching. So the other big learning is actually researching these materials. What do they cost? Going to the market, understanding what's available. So this exercise is not about just seeing that, it's about the process as well. So understanding the materials, the cost of materials, what's available in the market, what's local possibly, and can you actually use that effectively? I think is one of the learnings that we'd like you to go through, and not just building it and using something that's completely off the shelf or straight from a regular store. So what is available as an alternative, and how can you understand the materials, costs, structural ability of it? I think that's a big learning, which we'd like you all to experience it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We would now like to open the floor for questions to our students. So you can, the way we would go about it is you type in your name and your Z ID in the chat box, and one by one we would pick up your names and then you can unmute. And for everybody who's joined us via YouTube, you can type it in the comment section on YouTube and we would address your questions. We would take about 5 questions today, and the rest can be mailed to us on trophieshead@nasaindia.co, and the same would be later transferred to Sir Dean, and Tanuja would later address it to you via mail again.
Sir, I think meanwhile we could take a question too. So, as a person who worked with NGOs, what advice do you have for students who are now going to work with an NGO? What were your key takeaways that you would definitely let the students know beforehand?
Yeah, I think working with NGOs gives you an insight into what this country really needs. We at times, the sort of typologies that we create. So, say for example, uh, if you're designing a school building, and you would actually work with, the typical thing of designing a school building. So, I'll give you the example of, say, the Charles Clear Foundation. There was an NGO that actually wanted to build a creche, and so they sort of approached the Charles Clear Foundation. They said we want basically what is called an Anganwadi, and so they said we need to design this Anganwadi. So the foundation said, okay, a typical Anganwadi is really this hole in the wall thing, really not very exciting as a space. But how does an Anganwadi, work? What are the real issues that an Anganwadi faces, and how can you actually address it? And can this Anganwadi actually do more than just being a creche? So in an Anganwadi, you must know that, of course, since the children are very young, they're preschoolers, the parents come to drop the kids. And therefore, since parents come, could it be a center where the parents are also educated on various other issues which are there, maybe on health, on economics, in terms of finances, everything. So can this be a stop? So while the parents are dropping and maybe spending a little time or, coming a little early and picking up their children, or even just staying on a little in school, can there be can one impart other sort of useful information to the parents? So now that's thinking out of the box at the moment, because they've engaged now with the NGO, and they said that the NGO's duty is to actually serve society. It's not just to take care of children between whatever 8 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon and give them their little lunch in between, but it's actually to address what the problem in society. They're trying to serve the parents actually by taking care of the children while the parents can go out to work, whatever. So that's the main purpose. So it's a bigger sort of role that you're playing in society. So it's not just this one function of taking care of that young child. It's going beyond that. So in the NGO's design, for example, they looked at the issue of how does an Indian school child sit? They'll have a big backboard, and they're sitting on the floor, especially in a poorer sort of more rural Anganwadi thing, and they have to stretch their necks up and look at this big blackboard on the wall. So instead of having this blackboard on the wall, they made the floor in a black kadapa. So the floor became the slates. They don't have to have separate slates. They could actually write on the floor. So that also came with a consultation of understanding and engaging with the NGO, that the NGO understood that these were issues, that were taking place, and therefore they needed to be addressed. There's an organization called BALA, which is Building as Learning Aid, and it's run by this very innovative young architect, and he uses small schools to actually educate children in various basic principles of physics, mathematics. So the grills, for example, are designed like an abacus. The fans are like a color wheel. The door has, a protractor on it, so you can actually measure the angles. There are sort of seesaws and other sort of game equipment over there, which actually teaches you the principles of lever and all other, physics principles. So the school actually is a learning building, and that only comes about by actually working with an NGO. That we have to go beyond the typical thing of you're sitting in this empty building and you're learning from books. Can the school building itself be the book? So that's the moment you engage with people who understand, what they want to communicate. And you as an architect, maybe at times even the NGO may not have those ideas, but you as an architect can actually say, so can I do this? This is okay, this is what you want, but I would like to interpret it. So I think a lot of this comes from creative people. So there may be creative people in NGOs, but I think as architects, we can definitely add far more value to what we design. So we need that creative and innovative spirit to actually come up and design. It's not this typical thing. How can we actually, make a big difference? So that's why engaging with the NGO, you actually understand the problem, you brainstorm it, and you take it forward. So, for example, we actually worked, say, with the government of Maharashtra, with the tourism department, to build a 40-room hotel. The land, of course, went into a CRZ area. So they were wondering what to do because they wanted to buy another piece of land. But it's a beautiful piece of land which had a backwater and small islands, a big farming community in the area. So we said, what does the Maharashtra Tourism Department want? It wants to create tourism. It does not want to create a 40-room hotel. So instead, we measured all the houses in that village. And we said, let's create homestays. And for the fisher folk, we said, we'll create these floating platforms so people can actually stay on these little, like rice boat-like things, but it's much smaller, on these things and in the backwaters of the thing. So we've created a hotel, but a hotel that belongs to the people. So that's working again with the local, sort of social structure. I said, immediately you engage with the people over there. I said, yeah, we want to be, we want to be good earners. We don't want to work as bellboys and waiters in some hotel. And so you're achieving tourism, but you're actually giving it to the people who would run it far better rather than, say, the tourism department, which, will make these people subservient to them and not give them a good earning. So here they're actually earning much better, and they can actually control the sort of tourism that's taking place in the area. So that's what I mean by engaging with the NGOs, because you're understanding the situation much deeper and you're coming up with far more innovative solutions.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We do have the first question. So Jennifer Jogi from Z641 says, in the brief, it is said that the structure should be one or many of the following, and then contradicts the statement by saying it should also be a minimum of the following. Please clarify. So you're on mute.
I didn't exactly get the question, but I mean what you meant by it. But I think it's up to you to interpret. See, the purpose of the exercise is really to do an intervention which is effective. So it's at a scale that, having the time constraint or monetary constraint, you'd have to decide how much. So if it's something which is repetitive in nature, you're just doing one module of that thing as a sample of it, or if it's something which is larger. So maybe if the person actually gives an example of what they're intending, I could really address it far more effectively as an intervention, what the person is addressing. Because
Jennifer, if you're here, could you please raise the question?
Hi, so it's written in the brief that the hands-on 1:1 scale design can be one or many of the following in nature and needs to be a minimum of the below. And then 3 points are given below. stating an extension of the NGO premises, which has a public interface, a small mobile or dismantlable structure that provides livelihood to the disadvantaged, a communication outreach or pop-up kiosk for the NGO to be used at events or at public spaces. So should it be any one or many of the following, or should it be a minimum of all?
No, it's any one of the following. It's any one of the following, which is,
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. So we will go forward with the next question. Pranita Saraf asks, is it imperative for the final construction of the final structure to be on the site of the NGO?
No, it doesn't, because as I mentioned over there, it can be an outreach thing, a pop-up kiosk, whatever. It doesn't have to be located. It could be something which is popping up at, say, a convention hall or something, which the NGO is having a little kiosk which they're, showcasing their product or materials or their work that they've done. So it can be something which you can fold up, put in the back of a small vehicle and, pop up somewhere else. But it has to have that communication aspect to it, that says that the NGO is doing this sort of choice of materials, the sort of whatever physical communication that it has would be there. If one looks at, say, what happens in these trade exhibitions where they're showcasing, the various products, whether it's a stone or whether it's some new veneer or some sanitary ware, something, you can see how strongly they communicate what they want to do, where the strength of the product, maybe the quality of the product, or longevity of it, whatever. They create a sort of exhibition space which communicates that. In a similar way, how can your kiosk or pop-up thing actually communicate what that NGO is about? So that's the main idea behind it.
Thank you, sir. I picked up a question actually from our YouTube live. So we've gotten a question that asks about the design process. So the student asks, shall we follow a typical designing process that we are usually taught in college? Or do you have any suggestions on how should we go about the project to make it more implementable?
Yeah, so somebody had their mic on. Okay.
Students,
so,
kindly mute yourselves when you're in the meeting.
Yeah.
You can text in the chat box if you have any query. Yes, sir. Sorry to cut you.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, so it asked as to how do we go about the process of the design? Because
So basically, an architectural design process is very different from what, say, you use in product design. I have a partner who's a product designer, and in product design, the process is really a lot of back and forth with your engaging with the person, your client, in a way. It's understanding much deeper what the options are. It's then prototyping that option. It's and testing it. So basically, you prototyping, can this work? Can this? No, you don't have to necessarily build it, but you're actually dialoguing with the client in a way that, does this work? How do you communicate? And you understand in much deeper level this. So I think it needs a greater engagement with the NGO in understanding and innovating in the way and sort of getting it right. So it's somewhere between an architecture and a product design sort of methodology. So if you just research, for example, if you look at, say, if you can search in the NID website, maybe, or IDC, what is a design process? What does it mean? What does it mean in terms of how do you sort of go about it? I think that'll give you an idea of how rigorous the design process should be, because you're working with a very sensitive situation. The fact that you're actually working with an NGO that has a social cause behind it, so its issues are very sensitive. So can you effectively understand that their needs and execute it? So it means actually going back to the NGO and saying, will this work? How can I tweak it? So a lot of hand-holding in the beginning to get it right. And the moment you do that, and I think you'll have a far more effective solution. A lot of times with architects, we get a brief from the client, we say, this is the design. And usually a lot of the design goes well above the head of the client. So they say, okay, fine, yes, it's okay. But they really haven't understood it. This is so small a scale design where it's it's tangible for them. It's at a scale which they can feel, touch. So I think getting them to sort of understand it is great. So even if it means a scale model, so you understand the dimension of it, if you're creating a framework or something, they understand dimensionally what it is, how much, if you are, say, showcasing something, whether it's a poster or some sort of material that they're making, or that it's going to be placed here and there, and will it work or not? I think that's how I would see them engaging in a design process that is effective.
Yes, thank you, sir. So Kriti from Bombay asks us whether the materials that would be used to build the structure be used from scratch, in the sense, should they be purchasing new materials, or would you suggest the students reusing waste or discarded materials, and do you have any particular limitation to either of these ratios?
I don't think there's there's no bias to either material. The problem with waste, of course, it shouldn't look tacky. A lot of time waste materials are difficult to join. They may be defective, broken, whatever. So if you are using waste materials, use it in a way in which it is effective. I remember the pavilion that was done at the Kochi Biennale once. I think this was done by I'm not sure which group, but it was, of course, made in bamboo and a sort of, I think, recycled sheeting material. And they used old saris as the sort of, the draping for the underside. So you had these old saris which were put as a sort of false ceiling in the place. And it's extremely effective as a thing, because you didn't see it as a waste material. It was done so sensitively, and it was, of course, non-structural in a way. So it was it worked extremely well. So if you are using a waste material, just to be careful that it doesn't look like a waste material, that it's upcycled enough to look as if it's suits that particular sort of structure that one is building it. So that's the only danger. I mean, if you can use it effectively, I think, yeah, it's great to use it. But if you are using new materials, try and get it as low cost as possible. A lot of people ask me, what is sustainability? And, while sustainability is defined by all these, Terry Griha and Leeds, whatever, I think sustainability is driven by the need to actually bring down cost, because cost is a clear reflection of the cost of the material, the impact of the environment, the energy use that's gone into it. So if one is actually going low cost in broader terms, of course, I think that's sustainable. So I think keeping cost in mind is a good way to showcase that you are acting sustainable in what you design. I hope that answers that.
Hello, sir. I also had one question here. So my question is very specific to our requirements. I wanted to know, should we focus on developing something for the NGO that they might use it throughout their lives, or something as of now, like some problem or some situation that they have? Should we try to solve that in the present scenario, or something, or we should think on a future perspective regarding their lives throughout?
So it really depends on the NGO. Say my partner worked on this NGO that actually worked with books. It was promoting books in slum areas. So they were donated a van, and the whole idea was the van was converted into this moving library in a way. And so it had a display where the kids could actually walk into the thing, and it had these little boxes which we pulled out, and the kids could sit and they picked up books, and the teachers, whoever went around with the van, would explain what the books were about in a way. And it was quite effective in that way. And they found that it wasn't the kids were not reading as much as they should. So, and they were allowed to take the books. They were allowed to take a few books home. So they said that now. So they decided to actually prescribe certain books for different kids. And they said, okay, fine, you've got these 4 books. Now, if you don't, these books are never going to come back to you. So you keep it for whatever, the 1-2 weeks that you have. and we pick it up after a week or two. But you're not going to get the same book back again. So suddenly that loss occurred to them that, if I don't read it, I'm never going to see that book again. So it's a psychological game. Now, if you actually take that into your programming and say that, okay, how do I actually engage these students to make sure this is my goal is to get them to read a lot more, not just throwing the books at them and said, you want to pick it up. So how do you actually sort of get them to crave for those, books? So I think that's the moment you understand the goal of the NGO, you'll think of innovative ways. This extremely innovative way that I'm not going to give you another book. So you may be coming up with ideas like that with the NGO. That okay, fine. How do we actually make it, or can you say gamify this whole exercise in a way that that makes it effective? There's one of the organizations that in the offices where somebody worked with us and they've set up their own office now. They were asked to actually work with Club Mahindra on they have these recreational spaces in all the Club Mahindra resorts, so how do you actually now engage people in understanding about other Club Mahindras? What are the various activities? So they actually started gamifying this thing, and that immediately brought about an education of all the other, say, Club Mahindras that are available. What are the various sort of places they're in, the various experiences? You could go up to a Club Mahindra on the hill somewhere. You could go to at some riverfront property, seafront property, in the jungle somewhere. So just do this gamification of it. So in a similar way, does the NGO want to communicate something, and how can you actually, gamify that whole communication in a way is also another exercise that you can actually do. So you're immediately engaging people to sort of, dialogue with the NGO in some way, because through something, exciting that one can create. So there are many ways in which you can think of solutions. So don't just think of that structure with it, but how does the structure now sort of interface with the person and become a communication in its own? Like I mentioned about Bala, the building as a learning aid, how the building becomes interfaces with the school children and actually engages them in the learning process.
Yes, sir. So there's one question. Could you please clarify the scale of the design? That is, how many people it should accommodate at once?
So it doesn't have to be, it could be a kiosk, which say, as I said, a communication kiosk, which just has one or two people behind a desk or some sort of with a roof or whatever. So it doesn't have to be something which holds a number of people. So it depends upon what the NGO needs of the space. If we feel it needs like a shade, which, it has to take, like, say, 40 school kids, which and shade them, in a hot area or whatever, then so be it. But if it's something which is just meant to be, say, in a hall somewhere, so it doesn't have to be waterproof or whatever, it's just a little exhibition kiosk in some conference room or something, it could be that as well. So it really depends on the scale and also what you're capable of. So we're not worried about it becoming too small, but the whole idea, remember, is this is not an exam or something where you're going to be marked on something. It's about how effective you are in communicating or solving a problem. So if you can show that, so even if it's small, then let it be as communicative and as detailed as possible. So how can your communication, so whether it's you're integrating, say, signage with it, whether you're integrating, if it's something which requires something to be lit up, or where you're designing, say, a pamphlet that be connected to it, or all that can be part of the thing. So if it's something very small, so you show that you're going into far greater detail. If it's something very big, then maybe you don't need to get into things. They're dealing with much bigger problems of supporting that structure and making it stand properly and take care of the elements that it's facing, whatever. So we just like you to experience the way, depending on what the NGO needs, different scales. But so if it's larger, there could be much less communication or other details, design details supporting it. But if it's smaller, we'd like you to show that it's that you spent a lot more time in the finer details of it. So scale is variable based on how effective you feel whatever scale you need to go at to be effective, I would say. But don't take on something which you find too daunting, because you shouldn't be at a loss of something it's structurally way too big to handle or whatever. So I would avoid something find simpler solutions to the problem. If it's something which is modular in nature, so you can say, okay, I can build this module, but maybe this whole that you want to do is a combination of 6 or 8 of these modules, and I can create that whole. But if it's a small function, I can just use one module. So you can look at the modular situation to effectively solve a problem. So you can operate at different scales as well, depending upon if the NGO is working on a small event or a large event. These modules will come up connected and to address that particular event.
Yes, sir. I think we can take one last question from the participants. So this is the final question. Is there a scope for the structure where the site does not exist and the NGO works remotely and change their neighborhood accordingly? As per the requirement of activity and structure can be moved from one place to another, or does it require a permanent site?
No, it doesn't require a permanent site. And that's the reason why the exercise is also trying to push the agenda of a temporary structure. So it's something where you can design it, almost send the drawings over to some place, say, you can build it like this. So, it doesn't have to be. I mean, today's age, you have this thing of rapid prototyping. So you can just send a CAD file across and you can, on a 3D printer, make it anywhere in the world virtually. So not that we're proposing doing a 3D printing of this building, but it can be a design. For example, we worked with, we designed, say, a restaurant in Sri Lanka on the beach for the Taj in Bentota. And of course, we just saw the site once, but we understood what the site needed. We prototyped the furniture here in Goa. And so we could actually make sure that the chairs were ergonomically correct, the material was correct, whatever. But we only sent drawings across after we had finished the prototyping of it, prototyping the furniture, the lights and everything over there. And the drawing was sent across. So in a similar way, if, say, you prototype something and you say, okay, fine, these are the exact measurements, this is how the material joins together, this is the detail of it, that's as good to send across. But again, I said, stress upon the point that you must make that little prototype, so that you get your hands involved in the process of creation. So before I joined architecture, actually, I had a neighbor of mine who actually had a factory and who used to make pharmaceutical machinery. So I never really intended to join architecture. I was supposed to join mechanical engineering because my dad was a mechanical engineer. And I started working in this factory part-time, operating welding machines, drilling machines, cutters and everything. And I did, technical drawing as well on those big drawing machines as well. And that gave me a great insight into how things are made and how do you actually create technical drawings of these machines. And in the mechanical world, the tolerances are extreme. You're working in fractions of mm, for things. So I think that ability, that learning gave me a great ability to actually hone architecture much better. So hopefully this exercise actually meant for you to actually see how can I actually create. You're working at a scale which is much smaller than the typical architecture that we have, and you're handling materials at a much more scale. So it means actually picking up that drill maybe and cutting it with a hacksaw blade and really understanding material to a much greater level, and the difficulties of and the joys of actually making something yourself. So that's the main exercise is to get. I mean, in the early days when I studied architecture almost 45 years ago, our workshops were equipped with all this stuff. And I'm quite sure there still must be workshops in a lot of colleges which are well equipped. But for us, it was prototyping all the way. It wasn't just that first year workshop. You could go to the workshop anytime and start making things. You want to prototype, a sort of door or window, or trying something new. We could actually make that prototype. So we like to see that innovation actually take place now. and you'll have great design tools available in 3D modeling skills, which are available to test it out first, visually, and then see if you can actually make it by hand as well. So the whole exercise is one. I think the two main purposes of this exercise is to get you all socially conscious by engaging with an NGO, and the other exercise is to actually start feeling materials effectively, because both these seem to be lacking in a lot of the educational system that we have in colleges. Computers have taken away that ability to actually work hands-on, and also the commercialization of architecture has sort of disconnected us from our real social responsibilities. So that's the main reason why I do this. So the brief that we've given is fairly broad in the way, because we don't want you all to be limited at that. We just want you all to see the purpose of what we're trying to do and work roughly within that framework, and just be honest about, I'd like to engage up to whatever capacity I'm capable of doing, and to get these two things showcased and understood, and of course shared with everyone else, because this is all about learning experience. It's not this academic exercise, and I'm not really happy with academics. I think this thing of marking systems and winning prizes and everything, it's if everything is done honestly, everybody wins. So I don't look at this as a competition among people. It's really about engaging yourself in something and getting that self joy from whatever you're doing it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was just about to ask a few final words of encouragement for students, but I think you delivered everything so beautifully, finally. So I think with this, we can come to an end for this brief decode session. Of course, sir, from your insights and your key takeaways, I think students would definitely come up with really good structures, and emphasizing on the fact that this time the competition is completely an intention-based one. Thank you so much for being the moderator, and thank you so much for doing the brief decode session here today.
And please enjoy this exercise, because it's something which I'm quite sure you'd gain a lot from, from understanding what is needed out there, and from getting your hands and mind to work in coordination. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Good night. Take care. We appreciate you being on board as our moderator. And if there are any more queries from the students, you can mail it to trophieshead@nasaindia.co. Tanuja would release a form shortly, and the same would then be conveyed to Sir Dean. We wish you all the best from the NASA India Council as well. We look forward to all your entries.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night. Hi, good evening, everybody. Tanuja and Mia from the NASA India Council. If you have any queries with regard to any of the initiatives we are carrying out currently, or if you have any suggestions to NASA India, you can just unmute or text in the chat box. We would be happy to answer. We would stay in this meet for another 5 to 10 minutes and try to address any of the queries.
Could you please send the name of the email ID in the chat box?
Yes, sure. Tanuja.
There's actually a queries form in the brief itself. You can open the brief quickly, and in the form section, there's a queries form. So you can put in your queries. It's not yet closed. So
Have any of you recently attended any of our programs? We had a couple of offline programs happened in Chennai, a couple of insiders up north, and we also had online programs, the software workshops, and we would be also coming up with a cycle too shortly. How was your experience? Good, bad, ugly? We'd like to hear. Usually, I know as students, you get all the information about NASA India through your unit secretaries. There are a few moments where, council and students are in a meeting. So this is one situation like that. So we'd like to introduce ourselves. So Tanuja is the trophies head. Tanuja can explain a little bit more about your job role and how you handle all the trophies of NASA India. She's the person behind everything coming out from NASA India with regard to our trophies. She is also a student. You can share experience and how you handle and juggle everything behind the scenes.
Yes, before starting that, I've pinned a message of the queries form for the NDC. You can quickly fill in your queries if that are not answered here. Most definitely, we would get back to you within a week or so, mostly. Yes. Coming back to Vantika's question, yes, I'm serving as the trophies head in this year. And it's quite a juggle handling trophies and academics. I'm in 5th year, by the way, and I'm currently interning. And then I'd be starting with thesis project in the next semester. But with respect to trophies, it's a great experience because talking to every moderator personally, and of course, anyone who we get in as moderator are in their particular field, they're at the top, and speaking to this section of people, it really gives a lot of exposure, experience, and most definitely, it's not limited to just the council people. I think most unit secretaries or unit designees who are part of the unit council do get to experience this. But as delegates, we try and get most of the experience that we do to you through these decode sessions or whatever do we plan with respect to trophies. But again, all the trophies this year have been only an effort to make the job easier for you. And the planning of them has been done in a way where your academic calendars are not heavily clashed. Sometimes, of course, managing 6 zones calendars would be a little difficult here and there, but we do try to keep it reachable for all participants. So do participate because this is the only time that you get to participate in all of these. I think more once you reach out to the higher years, it would be a little difficult to make time, but most definitely for people who do, kudos. I think Ivantika herself can explain what she does, keeping the whole council and association together.
Hi guys, thank you Tanuja for your entire explanation. Definitely she does a lot behind the scenes on juggling academics. So I am Ivantika Pereira. I currently serve as the 67th year national president. So I'm blessed with a council of about 12 people behind the scenes who handle all the operations of the association. I look into the everyday operations and execution of the work as well as planning. So, apart from trophies and programs, as an association, as an NGO, we have a lot of duties we need to fulfill, like handling an entire bank account. We have a few laws to abide because, as an NGO in India, we are under a lot of surveillance usually due to the government constitution. So, there's a lot that as council members we take up, but it's again a good experience to be here in the council. All my council members are very efficient, everybody works hard to keep it all together, and yeah, we all play our key roles. At the end of the day, our whole agenda is just to serve the students, and currently NASA India is associated, or about 66,000 students are associated with NASA India from around 350 colleges across the country. And a couple of our initiatives also expand to countries and localities beyond our borders. So it's definitely a great experience. And more than that, what really counts is when students take it, make use of it, and would later implement it in their lives. Right from our conventions to our Nexus events, every typology of any scale of events is all handled by the council.
Also, along with us, we have Zonal President Zone 3, Rahul Mange, who's currently mute because he's live streaming on YouTube. So, yes, an introduction from his end as well. Yeah, that's about us, guys. That's about NASA India. The things that go behind the scenes to put out the show. Anyways, if you have any other queries, we would be open and would love it. It would be great for us to directly interact with you and in case clear any queries, of course. Also, the registration, with respect to the registration codes particularly, they are available in please reach out to your unit secretaries because they're available in the NASA India website. They just have to log in through the Z code or ZID, and it is up there in the submission portal or in the trophies tab. All the registered units would be, the codes will be displayed for the registered units only. So yes.
So just to give you a recap on what we are about to do in the later parts of the month that are coming up. Of course, the annual NASA convention would be towards the absolute end of our tenures. But before that, we have a couple of programs also that would be coming up. So all our programs are customized in such a way that all these collaborators give it to us at a lower rate. So one job role of us as council members is to get on collaborators and negotiate with them. Negotiate in the sense, have conversations with them to give all these programs to us at a very low rate. So as a student, suppose you're applying for a program via NASA India, the rate is always reduced and they give us at the cheapest cost. One example to give you, if you go on to the Laurie Baker Center program in Trivandrum, the usual cost of the program is X, but when it's given to NASA, it's all at a discounted rate. So here onwards, if you come across any of our program posters on our NASA India portal, be sure to register, and it's definitely at a rate that is pocket friendly for you. More updates about everything we do on NASA India is up on our Instagram. If you don't follow us yet, it is VNASA India. And we also have a website, vnasaindia.co. So, yes, guys, we can take each other's leave. I believe we have no questions more. Nothing on YouTube as well, I believe. So, yes, that's about it from our end. Take care. Greetings of the season. Have a blessed Diwali. Ciao. That's about it from my end.
Have a good night, guys. Have a really prosperous Diwali ahead. I think we can take our leaves. Shalini, yes. So no, NASA India doesn't hamper our academics, but we do have to have a proper time management. We do not give enough credit for ourselves, but yeah, it's a lot of time management and a lot of commitment from both ends that lets us continue in the council and serve in it. Of course, the schedules are sometimes very difficult, but at the end of the day, we do manage to put up the show. So that is how it's been running since 67 years with various council members taking up every year. I hope it does answer your question.